Hi everyone, it's Fiona and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over 5 DIY Christmas gifts that you can give to anyone in your family and they would love receiving them. First off, we're starting with some knitted dishcloths. You're going to need 2 things, 1 skein of cotton kitchen yarn and 4mm knitting needles. So we're going to begin with just tying a knot on our knitting needle to cast on. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your other needle and slip it underneath that knot and pull that string through, over, and onto the first needle. And that is your first cast on stitch. I'll also link a video down below that goes into more depth onto how to cast on because I'm definitely not an expert, but hopefully you can get something out of me showing you in this video. So here we have all of our stitches. I did 35 altogether. And here I'm starting our first row with a simple knit stitch. Again, I'll link a video down below that goes more into the basic knit stitch, but you pretty much slip your needle underneath the stitch on the first needle, and then you take your yarn around and then under, and you slip that stitch off the first needle. Now it's pretty simple. You want to keep going, doing your knit stitches until you reach 35 rows total up and across. Now when you get those 35 rows, you want to cast off. So here I'm doing 2 knit stitches. And now is the tricky part where you have to take the bottom stitch from those 2 knit stitches and slip it over the top one. I'll definitely, again, link a video on casting off because I still find this extremely difficult, especially the first stitch. But there's some really great videos that make it a lot more clear on how to do this. Now after you do your last cast off stitch, that final loop, you're going to cut off your yarn and then put it through that final loop and pull really tight. And I did an extra knot here just to make sure it was extra secure. And finally, you just cut off your excess strings and you're all finished. This is a super simple DIY to do for Christmas and almost anybody will be able to use them. And you can tie them up in a set of 3 like this with a little bow and with similar colors or whatever you would like, and it's super cute. So next we're going on to my absolute favorite DIY in this entire video. This is my first time making this blanket. What you're going to need is 7 skeins of chunky yarn. I use the Ariel Big from Loops and Threads. You can get that at Michael's. And I'm going to begin by tying my first knot, which is a simple loop, as you can see, and pulling it tight. Next, what you're going to do is from that first loop, you're going to take your yarn and pull another loop through that. And then you're going to keep going like this through your entire first row. I did 20 loops and that made the perfect size that I wanted. Now once you get to the end of the row, you're just going to pull another loop through and that's going to start your next row. And what you're going to do in the next row is you're going to find your gaps in between and pull your loop through there. Now at the end of every row, you want to pull through your last loop and then pull another loop through as well. So you need 2 loops at the end of every row, and that begins your next row. When you finish one skein of wool, all you're going to do is just tie the other one onto it with a knot, as you see here, and tie that as tight as you can, and then get your scissors and cut the excess off, and it should blend seamlessly into your blanket once you start looping it through. Now for casting off, what you're going to do is create 2 loops, and then you're going to take the outer loop and put it over the inner loop, as you can see here, and you keep going like that across the entire last row. Now once you've done your last cast off, you want to take your yarn and feed it through and knot it, as you see me doing here. I think it's called a sailor's knot, but don't quote me on that. And after that's pulled nice and tight, you want to cut your yarn. And then all you do is take that excess and feed it through that side piece of your blanket, and it should go in seamlessly. Here I'm just wrapping it up in a nice ribbon to gift. I'm going to end up giving it to my boyfriend's mom. And I think it's such a cute and luxurious looking gift that is so trendy and just adorable. I love it so much. Next, we're doing a big, super adorable scrunchie. What you're going to need is one big rectangle of fabric, 36 inches long and 7.5 inches wide. Here you see I'm just measuring and cutting my fabric. Once you get your fabric all cut out, you want to fold it over, and that is where we're going to sew a straight stitch all the way down. I left out about an inch or an inch and a half at the top and the bottom, and you'll see why in a little bit. Here I'm just turning my tube right side out. This is super easy to do. You don't have to use a safety pin or anything because the fabric is so big. And then here I'm just measuring out my elastic. I just decided to measure it around my wrist. I added a little bit more just because I'm going to be tying the elastic off, and so you just need that extra elastic for the tie. And so what we're going to do to attach the pieces together is you're going to put the 2 ends together where I left the extra inch, and then sew a straight stitch all the way down. I don't know if I'm explaining that properly, but here it is with the 2 sides attached, and there should be a little hole at the edge there where you can then feed your elastic all the way through with your safety pin. As you see here, I just made my knot in my elastic, and then I'm going to just fluff up the scrunchie to get that in there. And to finish it off, we're going to be doing a straight stitch right across that edge that's still open. And this is a really clean way to do it. As you can see, you can barely see where I sewed it up. And I think this is just a super cute DIY idea. I might make some to give to my sister, and yeah. Next up is a cute little drawstring bag. You're going to need 2 pieces of fabric that are 5 inches by 7 inches and a ribbon about 8 inches long. This is just more of a packaging idea for Christmas, but also it could be very useful to whoever that you give it to. So I began by sewing one side of each of my squares together, and then I ended up doing a rolled hem to just finish off that top edge. And you're just going to sew a straight stitch right across the hem. And now here, after that is all sewed, we're going to put it right sides together and sew along the bottom and the side just a straight stitch. And here I'm just unpicking the seam that I sewed before, where we're going to wedge in our ribbon. As you can see, I also had decided to do a zigzag stitch also around, which just helps the edges to stop from fraying. Now we have the hole to fit our ribbon. We're just going to fold it over in half and then just sandwich it in. And then all we're going to do is sew a straight stitch over the ribbon, and I also decided to do the zigzag again just to make sure there was no fraying edges. And this is how you just tie it over, and this is a super cute packaging for the scrunchie that we made earlier. Next, we're making a really cute tote bag. This is perfect to replace regular packaging for a Christmas gift. You're going to need two 20 by 30 squares and two 2-inch by 35-inch straps. Here I'm just using a gift bag that I already have as a template. The dimensions ended up being the ones that I gave you at the beginning of this, but I didn't really know exactly the shape or the size that I wanted at the beginning of this. So here I'm just cutting around, and I ended up giving some excess fabric at the top to give it a more rectangle look. Also, don't worry that iron was not plugged in. I was just using it as a weight. Here I'm taking my edges over first, I think about 1 centimeter, and then second 1 inch, and I'm just going to sew a straight stitch. This is just going to create that top finish of our bag. We need it to be slightly thicker to help attach our strap securely. Once you have your two strap pieces cut out, you just want to put them right sides facing together and sew a straight line down each side, giving about a 1/2 inch seam. And now here are the nice finished edges of our bag. We're going to put right sides together and just sew a simple straight stitch around every edge. And here I also decided to add a zigzag stitch around just to stop the edges from fraying. Now to create our box corners on our bag, what I had to do is line up the side seam and bottom seam on each corner of my bag, and I just pinned it so it stayed in place, and then I measured a 3-inch line because that's how wide I wanted my bag to be at the bottom. And I just traced it with my fabric chalk pen. After this, you just want to sew a straight stitch across there and you should be all good. And here I'm just attaching my straps with pins, and I'm going to sew a box around the straps, which should keep them nice and secure. And what I forgot to film was that I cut that long strip in half to create 2 straps that go on either side of the bag. And here is the final product.